Good day and welcome everyone to SUSE QE Tools Workshop this week, with the topic being about the all the different badges, icons, and review helpers that we have in Openj. And Marius will lead this workshop. I guess he will show us a bit and demonstrate, and then I hope that we can also discuss that, collect experiences from members, as well as ideas for the future. So.
And instead but so now got this commented icon. This is basically what the review badge was before. So in this build, we have actually a comment under all 16 failed jobs, but not all of them are review comments. And we have this new icon, but it's actually just the old green certificate. We just changed the icon, so every different state is not only distinguished by color, but also by a different icon. It's, of course, also deployed on O3. And if you go, for instance, on one of these builds, for instance, the one which has 11 at the end, I already just did it. And if you go there and enable to do on the test result overview, you will see, okay, this build, which ends on 11, has no failed jobs anymore, which makes sense because it has the review badge. And on the other hand, the one which ends on 10, which only has the commented icon, which you see, has, if you go on the test result overview and enable to do, it has still these failed jobs which have comments, but yeah, they are not review comments.
Yeah, no, only plain comments, no labels, no proper labels in the sense of Openj, as well as no bug references. And the label is anything that would have label and a colon in the name.
Right. So now, and this was actually in before. So the to-do flag always behaved like this. And now the review badge is actually in accordance with the to-do flag. Yeah, so actually not a very big topic, because that's what we have so far with the review badges. There's really nothing more. You can read about it in the documentation, of course, which has been updated. And yeah, here you see the meaning of the different colors. Of course, I just told you that, so I'm not going into it anymore. And maybe we should say under failed, not everything, but different results actually count into that, not just the exact failed result. But as you can also see here, the parallel failed jobs are apparently not important here. Okay, so now, yeah, your call for questions or further ideas to improve.
I have a question. The thing that you showed right now with the to do field and the parallel failed.
Yes.
The parallel failed can help to give this context when one is reviewing a test failure, and of course there are scenarios where it certainly makes sense to know about the parallel failed, so that for some reason, like the server failed, so you want to know that of course the client which runs in parallel could not succeed. This is why it has parallel failed. But I'm thinking that maybe we can also try to harmonize that so that the to-do query is actually empty, not showing any test results when the certificate icon also shows up.
Yes, I think it would make sense. These were likely just overlooked in the initial implementation of to-do. Because
Yeah.
these are actually also, I think, in the state, or yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe they are even in the state cancelled.
Well, they are not done per se, right? Because you can also see that in the summary it says 0 passed and 0 failed, and still 2 show up. So that means they are neither passed nor failed because, well, they are parallel failed, which is, yeah, as you said, likely cancelled, right?
Yeah, it's also a bit weird that it has not a category on the top.
Yeah, I will note that down. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So other ideas or questions from anyone? So maybe let me ask then. Who is okay, yeah, Marita, go ahead.
I remember there was a question about reviewing, and then the idea came up to have a label like, we know this issue, it's a known issue, we cannot fix it right away, it's complicated to fix, and then there was a suggestion to have an idea like, it counts as passed, so, but it's not fixed yet. Wasn't there a discussion about having a label like this? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Marius, you want to comment on that?
I was certainly not involved in the discussion.
Okay. So I think this is what we do with soft fail, and we have different ways how to make something show up as soft fail. We can write that in the test code for workarounds which we put in place. This is where it's most commonly used. But what we had also implemented later, but also already 2 years ago, is that we can force the status of a job to be soft failed. So what we can do is, in a job that would fail, within the test code, we can override it to force it to soft fail, which is kind of making it softer. When we say like, yeah, this is an issue and we can actually not really work around and the scenario would abort, but still we want to count it as soft fail. That can be done from test code.
And this is already 2 years old?
Okay. That's already included. That's supported, yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm asking because we have this discussion about maintenance job groups should be automatically approved, and then we would need something like this. But if it's already there, that's actually good. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. So, right.
It requires a change in the test code, not just writing a comment somewhere.
Okay,
But
yeah,
yes,
we can talk about the different workflows, and maybe we start with Tumbleweed because Marius, you already showed these results. So what we can see here is that on the overview page, we can see that for Tumbleweed, the certificates icons show up. And they show up because the process that is used for publishing Tumbleweed is relying on the same set of criteria for the icon to show up. Another example might be WSL. Maybe that's the best example, because yeah, we can see that there are only past jobs. This is why there shows the green check mark shows up, and that's of course the least effort to say all the jobs pass and then the builds pass. In reality, how to achieve that can of course always be to say, if there's a failing scenario, well, we remove the scenario and then there are only paths left, right? And this is also what we aim for within the on submission testing for the SUSE maintenance workflows, where we say we really have only the very stable scenarios in place. When they fail, we are absolutely sure that the submission itself was the cause, and otherwise there is no other process needed to look at the green check mark or to see that all the job results that feedback are passed. So how is it handled for Tumbleweed? Yeah, Marius, you want to?
yeah, I just noticed here we have still one unfinished job, and we got still review badge.
Yeah.
The same counts for the skipped ones. So yeah, that's just something I forgot to mention. We can actually still have unfinished and skipped jobs and still get the badge. So this is a detail, but yeah, maybe
Right.
it could be confusing if you don't know it. So for instance, if we would reload the page, maybe the certificate might not be there anymore because this one failed and nobody reviewed it.
Can I add a sentence here? That actually has a funny effect that when you have something completely blue, you get that badge, and then if green shows up, you have the badge, and if skipped and failed show up, then the badge disappears. Yeah, I've seen this quite often. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly true. I must say I was also a bit confused about it when I implemented the new features. I, of course, tested them and ran into this and was wondering, okay, is it now broken? But apparently it was always like this. So this is actually where I'm not sure how we can improve it.
Yeah.
So it's still like this.
Yeah, it's that's correct. The icon is obviously intended for human reviewers looking at this page as a dashboard. So think about showing this page in the dashboard view on a screen, as for example we had in an office room, where it show up and it automatically refreshes, and at every time we can see, do we need to do some review work right now or not? So the certificate icon is always the snapshot at that time. For Tumbleweed, for example, I can add that so we can see that there are failed jobs in Tumbleweed, but still Tumbleweed users know that they have new builds. So it's not like all tests pass before we have a new Tumbleweed build released. It is that all test results are either passed or they are reviewed and accepted to be ignorable for builds. And that means, in effect, we need all jobs to be finished and the certificate icon to show up. But the process that does this decision is called toTestManager, and toTestManager doesn't pass the web page to look at the certificate icon, but actually it's doing something similar to that it's doing a comparison of the unreviewed job results, which is accessible over the API. The challenge here, George, I have seen you in a second. The challenge I see here, thinking about the alternative to say, when should we know that, considering the alternative to only show up the certificate icon if the build is finished and we need to do review work, so that it would not show up in the beginning. It would be possible to not show the certificate icon as long as there are any unfinished jobs. But then there can also be still other corner cases. Consider a build of consisting of multiple architectures. This is the same for Tumbleweed as for SLE. These architectures rely on individual media, like there's one ISO file for x86-64, and then there's one for AH64 and for others. So we commonly, there's also a bit of asynchronicity how we trigger these media. We trigger them as separate products, a separate set of tests, and they show up in the same build. So it can be that we have only 1 or 2 out of 4 medium triggering tests, and maybe they have already no jobs that need to be reviewed, so the black certificate icon would show up. But we shouldn't consider the build complete because there are 2 media which are completely missing, like H390 couldn't even build, or something like this. This is something that OpenJ cannot decide the same way for all the products, because that differs how the different products would like to be implemented.
Yeah, that's true. Of course, to simplify what you've just said, not all jobs might even be scheduled for the build at this point.
Correct.
And yeah, the skipped ones are of course also maybe something a human would check about. I mean, if it's a really high number of skipped jobs, maybe something is wrong.
Exactly. I wouldn't say that humans need to check that, because that depends also on the product specific workflows. I mean, this is easily automatable. We can just look at the numbers. This is what ToTest Manager is doing for Tumbleweed. It's just that for every product that just needs to be defined, we need to make up our mind and say, when do we call a product completely tested? As soon as there are no failed tests, regardless of how many are still scheduled? Or do we wait until all are finished, or something in the middle? So, George, you raise your hand. Please go ahead. Any question, comment?
I'm sorry, there is a huge amount of noise from someone.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, sorry, I needed to mute locally because unfortunately I wasn't a moderator. So, HJ, could you please mute yourself? Or whoever is moderator here. Julie, you are moderator. Could you please mute HJ? Sorry, guys. You can mute individual members individually. George, can you give it another try now?
I think we have lost him just. I think HJ is Hua Chuan, right? Hua Chuan, can you please tell me if you're here?
Okay, and then George
disappeared again.
That's fine. This is why this is a workshop, not a conference presentation.
I can't see him.
Yeah, I've just muted him locally.
And you can though individually mute him. There's a volume control in the 3-dot menu for the person. So even if we don't have permissions to mute him globally,
Yeah.
So-
So he's
then the nose goes away.
HJ.
Okay, George, can you give it another try?
Yes. Can you hear me over the noise?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you mentioned the case where, let's say, some build is missing some jobs, and this, of course, will earn the black badge, and it will need some maybe meta information then for the reviewers to understand how it's going. Also, another case that could happen, I'm just asking now if it could happen. Can it be that all labels are inherited by the failing jobs and the black badge is assigned automatically in a new job? Well, then in that case, it could mean that some failed job failed somewhere else, but it inherited the label. So also in that case, it would still need to be checked by some human.
Yes, technically, but there's also something to prevent it. So the inheritance only works if the failure looks similar to OpenQA, and it is very strict about it. I think the set of failed test modules need to match exactly to the previous one. And if it's not matching exactly, then the label carryover will not happen.
Right.
Cool.
That could happen in case the same set of modules fail, but in the same first module that was triggering a failure, the failure happens in another step. Then the label would be carried over when maybe you don't necessarily see it as the same failure reason. That could be.
Yes, so the granularity is test modules. If it's
Right.
different in a step, then yeah, it can
So-
happen.
So maybe I know it's an edge case. But I've had it happen. So the same module fails differently, and it then it can be that it has the black badge. Could it be then? Does it have value to add a different colored badge than if it is actually was reviewed instead of, I don't know. Is it too much?
Technically, we could do it if the comments are, I mean, the carried over comments are likely by some bot
Automation,
account. So we could say, okay, but if not all comments are written by not this account, we would assign this special
Right.
badge.
So in principle, for me, that is the more general and interesting question, which I also don't see easily answered in other software projects, is like, should we distinguish clearly humans and bots, or do we treat them as the same? So, do we foresee a way that bots and humans can interact with the system in the same way, like write comments? Or should we clearly separate that and say, no, bots can only use this entrance path and humans can only use this entrance path? The same, I mean, I see the same problem in Smelt, the SUSE maintenance tool. I see it in OBS and in IBS when, there's a mixture of bots and people. Sometimes you don't even know who did what, which can be funny. But best practices to avoid the scenario that you mentioned is regarding the test design. If you see that happening, that a test module happens to fail in different steps and the different steps mean completely different issues, then I recommend to split the test module. Make individual steps of the test module appear in individual test modules. Then it's also easier for human reviewers. So not only the label carryover would then behave more strict, but also for human reviewers it's easier, because on the overview page you would see like, okay, it's not like failing in the same module anymore, but it's failing in the pre-step number 17 or whatever, and I know exactly what that means, and it's not a later step. Another way how to prevent that is to say, well, don't rely too much on the label carryover, use something more stricter. And two other ideas come to my mind immediately. One would be to use auto review. Auto review is this technique where with a regex parsing the auto-inst log file of jobs, you can define a label linked to a progress ticket. Okay. So when you have a progress ticket and you can define a regex in the summary screen with auto review as keyword, then whenever a job fails, it will automatically assign that label into the job. And this is more strict. This can be more strict because the regex can be as strict as you like to say really only if that string appears and exactly that string in the output, then we label it.
And Oliver, by the way, I mean, it just leads to the question, can you actually disable the label carryover in OpenQA?
Yes, you can disable the label carryover per group. So for example, in the kernel job group, it was selected that there is another review mechanism, so you don't want to compete one bot with another. So you can.
Then I assume if it's possible, I would find it here. Ah, right, I can disable it.
Yeah, you're not sharing your screen anymore, by the way, if you want to show something.
Okay.
And the second technique which can be done is, again, defining soft failures. So what you can do is, within the test code, make it soft fail. And then within the test code, that can also be very specific because you have the full power of Perl code. So, you could check anything you want with, like, if this and that, and parse this file, only then record it as soft failure. That can make it much more specific. George, does that help?
Sure. So the two suggestions, I didn't know the one with very strict regex matching, so that sounds very nice. On the subject of what was the last one that you mentioned?
Use soft fails from source code.
This is a good advice. It's just it doesn't cover the case with the failure is blocking the rest of the tests, but it needs to run, let's say, an installation job or something like that. But in the other case, this is super useful. And on breaking it down in different modules, the only hurdle and why people is not doing it more is because it is a pain in the scheduling. Then we need some kind of meta information to know that those modules go together, and we don't have this. So to avoid errors, probably people don't do it that often. That's my take.
Right, that's a good point, but it's kind of you're right. It's not a problem specific here. I don't see that it's really an issue that should prevent you to do it in that case, because we also have many other modules where it works fine, like the welcome module to initial screen for the installer, and that had been working for years. And I mean, in OS Auto-Inst distri OpenSUSE, that's handled in a special way with this YAML schedules, but still, when you split a module, what you would do is you would do a search and replace of the module and replace it with the two modules that you split out, or how many you want to. One more note regarding the soft fail, to be sure that we're on the same line. So soft fail can be used for regardless if the module result would be fatal, critical, or anything. It's just that with record soft failure, you define that definite bug reference. And if the job fails afterwards, then you can still have that bug reference by soft failure in it. If you want, then you can force the result of the job module to be soft fail and not to be the more severe failure. So even that would work.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so yeah, Marius, you show the job configuration page.
Yes, I've just looked at the place where you can configure the carryover, and it also contains actually the help with just what I've said about when it's done. So yeah, any other questions or ideas?
There are no questions or note in chat. So yeah, everybody please feel welcome to chime in. In the meantime, Marius, could you go back to the index page of OpenKey OpenSUSE.org? Let's just find some examples again to train our understanding. So for example, let's go to the bottom, to the OpenKey page. So what we see, it was a bit too much.
Okay. Which one are you
The
interested in?
OpenKey job group. Sorry, the OpenKey jobs. Where is that?
Where is it?
And I'm also lost. Oh,
Maybe
it is actually at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Right.
is at the bottom. Yeah.
Right. So what we see there is the build 8110, and we see the green check mark. Marius, could you explain a bit? Do these icons matter to us within the SUSE QE Tools team, or how do we care about the actual job results of these tests and what effects they have?
I think they affect whether OpenQA is submitted. Also, I'm actually not quite sure out of my head how the workflow is, but OpenQA is, of course, as package submitted to Tumbleweed, and I think if we have failures here, the submission is prevented.
Right.
And this is actually a separate test distribution from the regular one.
Yes, of course. Similar to the one above, the Open Build service, this is also special. And yeah, what does the comment tell us?
Yeah, the comment tells us, well, there's a comment, let's just read it. Okay, this is just the investigation comment.
So who posted that?
That posted some script which is invoked as a, how is it called? I don't know, post fail script.
Yeah, a hook script, because it hooks into the workflow.
Yeah, right, hook script.
Yeah, so it's a plain comment. It's more like information but no decision, right?
Yeah, and of course here it says it triggered some retries, so we could, for instance, check whether they pass or not.
So this is the retry, it passed. What does that tell us?
That the issue or the test or the code under test is not quite stable.
It could be that retry refers to that by now the test code was updated, so it could be that we are that it was actually fixed in the meantime. But here I agree that because that was, let's say, early in the morning, it's unlikely to be because of a test fix. This points to likely flaky test code, so an not completely reliable test. Yes,
yep,
correct.
and in this case, it also says no test changes recorded. So I would assume if
yes, sorry, perfect. Yes, exactly. This is why the script doesn't even re-trigger something like the last good test code, because it's just the same. Exactly. Right. So if the retry passes, that's a clear indication, a rather clear indication of very likely it's a flaky test, an unstable test.
Yeah,
correct.
This should be in accordance with investigation, with the information from the investigation tab. Yeah, right.
Okay. So as you explained, the OpenQA and OpenK tests are used to control automatic submission of packages, from our development repositories to Tumbleweed. And whenever any test fails, that means no submission is, the submission is not continued. The submit request is not created until the test is passed again. So for the OpenQA and OpenQA tests, our process, you could see our process as in we need the green check mark. Right.
Yeah.
How about
the first bed? I think that's also something new, right?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, anyone
And-
not have seen that in before, that can be helpful to reduce the diff because you're not piling up changes.
Apparently, we also use VP9 here. I wasn't aware that the worker is configured this way. Interesting.
Ah, yeah, interesting. So yes, there is actually a difference in the two workers. You had configured this one worker. Which is
One,
different.
but not this one, I thought. So this is because why we now see it's a WebM.
Right.
Maybe I also configured this one and forgot about it.
Yeah, I think you configured image test and as the only machine, right?
Yeah, I also thought so. And this is
That
is
is-
image
it
tester.
is.
Damn it. I thought it was OpenQA Worker 7.
You can
Okay,
see that
good.
in the diff that previously it was open. So
Yeah,
this is,
I'm stupid. I just thought it was 7 because of
Right.
this, but it's not.
okay. So let's look at other results if you don't mind. So go back to the
Yes.
index page, please. For example, let's check the updates and incidents test for Leap 15.2. So there you go. So you see that for incidents we have green check marks. That's good. That means there's no manual review work to be done. And that also means that depending on the behavior of the OpenGA maintenance bot, then these incidents can then be automatically approved. And for updates, what we see there is that, so we see plain comments for the latest builds, which makes sense because that isn't finished yet. So maybe we have some investigation info, but we don't see all failures as completely reviewed. If I refresh the page, then actually I see
I can also refresh it.
a black certificate icon there as well.
By the way, do we have the to-do flag on this page as well?
No, we don't.
No.
Right, so we see 3 times certificate icons, and in the latest build we can see that the certificate icon means there is currently no job to be reviewed, but we still have unfinished one.
Yes, that's the thing which we talked about earlier.
Right, and I know products that say we can't wait for all jobs to finish. Maybe as part of a certain product, you have tests that run for, let's say, 1 hour, and then there are others which run for 10 hours, and you want to say the 10-hour jobs I still want to run, but I can't wait for them to make a decision if that thing should be released or not. Yanis, raise your hand.
Hey, everyone. If you go back to the investigation page, I would like to ask the question that actually I had a request and I want to know the opinion of the rest of the people here about how efficient is the way that we display the differences between the report, and if we can have one way to have it merged, the commit with the files that change.
Yeah, I think, for example, here you mean the needles diff stat and the needles log.
Yeah, or if you go to the test logs, if
It's
you
the same for test diff stat and test log, if these would be merged. So that's each git commit log line would be kind of a header for each individual diff stat, right?
yes, because you asked me if, what other people think
Yeah.
about that, but I have no idea. I just my personal-
Exactly. Good idea. Good question. So yeah.
It might already be cool if you could just click on the hash and go to GitHub to view the diff.
Yeah, but I have this ticket.
That would be another cool idea, certainly. The specific thing that Yannis had in mind is
what my problem, if I try to investigate from here, I have to check what file have changed and then go to commit to see what, or the other way. But if you have the commit with a good message and you see what file have changed, it's more easy to maybe catch the problem.
Yep. So any other ideas or opinions about that? Which one would you like more, George?
Maybe on that, just to augment a bit the request, could we also maybe click on a commit and automatically run the git respec on that commit? Just we know that the previous commit has green results, and then we can advance slowly, for debugging purposes.
Oh, that's that's much more elaborate. For that, we would need to have test results corresponding to each git commit.
That is true. Maybe then only on the single ones that have results. Or maybe is this it? Is the last and the first only the ones that have results?
Yes, we do have these results from, we do have actual test results from Openj Investigate. Probably not in that job. Marius, could you please click on the comments tab? I assume
could
there's...
I also tie the results?
Here we do. So, George, you see that in this case we have 4 tests scheduled by the automatic investigation.
And can we see which commit was the last one on each of those?
Yeah, you can see the git hash in the second line. It says last goods tests. So that's the git hash from the test distribution corresponding to the last good.
Okay, then my question is covered. Thanks.
Ah, cool. Right. Okay, so so I haven't heard a clear opinion. Marius, what do you think? Merge the git log list with the diff stat. Do you know what we mean?
Yes. So this, I mean, you would likely see the file changes like here, but for each commit individually under the commit header.
I have posted,
right?
Sorry, man. I have posted a link and I have a output of how it could look like.
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be easiest, Marius, if you could follow the link in the Jitsi chat.
Yes, I'm doing it.
And there is this proposed expectation which you can unfold. So there you see an example.
I think I had actually already a look at the ticket at some point.
Sure, thought so. That's good.
Yeah, so yeah, it's like that you have the headers and then the corresponding files directly under them.
It's exactly the same output, just more aggregate.
Is it the same? I mean,
it's different because you would have the diff stat for each commit. And what we show is the summary of diff stat between like combined from the complete.
Yeah, right. So for instance, if this commit does something and the next one reverts it, it would not show up here at all.
Yeah.
But in this case, it would of course show up.
Any
Yeah,
preferences or opinions by others?
By the way, that's why I mentioned a link here would already help to GitHub, because
Yes.
if you then click there, you will get exactly the diff from GitHub. So maybe that also makes more sense than having this possibly huge changes here directly.
+1 on that.
Yanni, sorry, I didn't get that. Can you say again?
+1 on the
Last one only, but what do you mean?
+1.
+1. Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you think this would be a sufficient alternative to your proposal?
Sure. From my side, it's very clear that, yeah.
Yeah, maybe one could filter out uninteresting things like VNC and worker ID, because this is of course always, I mean, unless you have lucky, it's different.
Yes, there is a way. We already exclude some variables, like some hash variables, which are really just internal. The worker actually can make a difference. Yeah.
Yes, right. Worker can make a difference. Also, the ID is maybe a bit arbitrary. Yeah, here we also see the change to shift from absolute paths to relative ones. I mean, not directly here, but this one, this I should have been highlighting.
Okay, right. Good. Thank you. So let's go back to the index page, please. We have seen that we have the incidents here with the green check mark. We see the updates which show the certificate icon, meaning that there's currently no unreviewed job. For Argon and Krypton, for example, we can see this comment icon. So that means...
Yeah, I just wanted to say the green also shows up if you have one soft failed.
Yeah.
So soft failed is not distinguished here, but I think it's okay because you can just look at the bar and see it.
Yeah, exactly. So we tried with this icon to show new information, which you wouldn't directly, like in the above cases, you can see that it makes a difference. There can also be cases where we have all passed and green check mark showing up. So it's still relevant information to look at the build bar. Okay. Right. Any other comments or notes here? I think that's good enough.
What I did not show is that you can, of course, expand these and see the badges on the sub-level. Oh, yeah, because right. OSD makes more use of it, and now we only looked here. But it's okay, these examples are boring.
Yeah. There you can see how the aggregation would work. And basically we already aggregate the results in the corresponding summary build bar. And then we compute the icon. I think we compute the icon based on the summary build bar individually, right?
yeah, it's behind the scenes.
Yeah, I guess in the end it makes no difference. So if all subgroups have a green check mark, then of course we would have a green check mark on the top level.
Yeah.
If all subgroups have a black certificate icon, then we would have a black certificate icon on the top level. And if there's any job group that only has comments, then we would also show only that on the top level. And if there's any job group like here, which does have neither no plain comments and no black certificate icon and no green check mark, then also the top one doesn't have any icon.
Yeah.
Okay. Marius, thank you very much for that. Thanks all attendees. As the next workshop topic, we have proposed an Openj API Playground, where we can together experiment with using the Openj API, different API routes, different ways how to access the API, and that can give a good foundation, that can provide an understanding of how Openj is already integrated in other tools, as well as can give a good foundation for building your own custom workflows and tools based on it. Until then, see you again in upcoming workshop. Thank you all and goodbye.